Welcome to Trance Talks. This is Susan Marco, and I hope you find this conversation as engaging as I did. Have a great day and enjoy. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Trance Talks. This is, my podcast where I have conversations with many different practitioners of, all kinds of alternative modalities and cool stuff. And today, I have to tell you, I'm so happy to be sitting here with my dear friend, Marcia, who, oh my God, I don't even want to say Marcia and I, well, we know each other 40 plus years. So we met when we were two. But we go way back, and Marcia has been not only a dear friend, but instrumental for me at different pivotal times in my life in helping me to figure out what the hell was going on and what guidance was appropriate for me at those times. And so she's got a lot of she studied, she was a special ed teacher, and then she got her degree in counseling, and then she went down the rabbit hole with her spiritual intuitive abilities and has combined all of that together now in what we were just talking before we jumped on, what I'm going to call intuitive counseling. So without me saying too much more about it, Marcia, first of all, welcome and thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
And I'm just going to give the podium over to you and ask you to please tell us, who is Marcia Bartolf and what do you do?
Okay, so thank you again for having me on. I think it's important for everybody to understand that we're all on a journey, and I personally believe we've chosen this journey, even with some of the difficult points we all face, and myself included, sometimes say, what was I thinking when I chose this lesson? Because some of them have been very difficult, even for me. And I once did a reading for somebody, and the woman said to me, your life must be so clear because of what you do. And I just laughed and I said, well, not really. When I step aside from doing readings, I'm still wife, mother, educator, counselor, and I face the challenges just as anybody else does. So I think it's important to understand the history just for a minute, because I think people go, I could never do that. And I really believe we're all born with an intuitive energy and intuitive ability, but it's like a muscle. Okay. If I took a 5 pound weight every night and I lifted it, I'd have a muscle on my arm after a month or two. It's the same thing, I think, with using this intuitive muscle of, I know it's there for everybody, but it depends on how we've been brought up and what the belief systems are, whether we're free to use it. And, as a child, I always felt something else was there, though I didn't know what it was. But like all children, nobody wants to be the weird one. So you stuff it inside, until you're able to process, your age, what you know, where you want to go. So yes, I started out as a special education teacher. And then at the time, I'm the last of four children. My eldest sister was diagnosed with cancer. We were at Sloan Kettering, and head to toe, they said to her, you got three little kids, get it in order. Maybe you have 6 months. And my brother happens to be a holistic chiropractor in New Jersey. And he said, well, we're going to help her heal. Now, being the last of four in my house, if the older ones told you what to do, you did it. So he taught us all meditation. He took us to healers. We did so many different things. And the long and short of it is, we went back to Sloan Kettering a year later, and the cancer had shrunk from being in the body to the breast. And with a mastectomy, she survived and she passed last year, but that was at the age of 83. And so she had been such a pivotal person. What a lesson she chose to teach all of us. It deepened my brother's work. My other sister went in to be a physical therapist, and I knew something else was out there. And at the time, I was reading the Shirley MacLaine books about channeling and things, and I didn't know what that was at all. And my brother was dating somebody who said, so and so was coming out and he was going to give a workshop on how to open up to your inner guides. And I took it. And that was the life-changing part for me. And it was really learning about how to get out of my own way from the Marcia I knew in my head to what I felt in my heart had to come up and come through.
Mhm.
And so that is really where and how it started. I also don't believe anything is by accident, whether it's meeting people, good or bad. I think there's a lesson to learn from each person we meet. And I wound up meeting somebody at my place of work in the school I was working at who was a counselor, and just watching the magic he did in a school with children just was such an eye opener. And so I then went for a degree in counseling. And between, learning the forms and how to work that, and then the knowingness that I was able to get to, it it really started on its own. I don't advertise, I've never advertised, and I have been very blessed with amazing clients. And where I feel it's a different, and that's what I do like using the term intuitive counseling, is I think it helps people to give them a piece of something that they always knew in a way, but they couldn't quite place it or understand it. And you could see it on their faces when it resonates and they go, oh, okay. So that I've been working for 40 years now doing this work. And it's very interesting because it's such a trust level for myself. Instead of saying, what do I need to tell people or what do they need to know? It's what I do now is I will, before I sit with somebody, I will go up through meditation through the chakra levels to the highest level, to what I call or been told to call the gatekeeper, and ask for information for them. And I write it down because then that's a tangible thing that I give them when we're done. Then I go down a level to the part of somebody who's passed around them. I try and describe the person and tell them that message. And so for me, that's a more grounding way of opening up to do a session. And then I can go to questions that they may have. So I'm always a little off on heights, weights, and dates. I can go into what's going to happen, but I now will say to somebody, well, it might be a few weeks before, a few weeks after. Um, I think being as specific as possible is helpful, but there's always that human factor and free will on people.
Mhm.
So, so
Yeah,
that I think is the long and short of it.
that's what I was thinking as you were talking about that. Like right now, today, things might be headed in a certain direction,
Right.
but I have free will. And if in 5 days I decide, nah, I don't want to go that way, like, okay, you're going to meet your soulmate in 6 months. Well, between now and 6 months, what my soul needs in terms of a connection with a human might, it could change drastically. So that person might not show up in
Well,
six
it's also
months.
interesting because I've said to somebody when I have a lot of people who come in about when am I going to meet the person? And, sometimes it's like, hey, this could be right around the corner or it could be 9 months. But the question then becomes, well, what are you doing in that 9 months? Are you
Yeah.
sitting and doing nothing and waiting? Or I call it a playground. Go out, go online, go to a bar, whatever it is. It's about understanding that there will be things that will happen, but you are so much in control as we are of how we process what's happening. For me, I had done readings for others for about 10 years, and then I had a daughter, and I couldn't explain it other than she would come home with a headache from gymnastics. And I knew something was wrong. Something was wrong. And all the doctors just called me a hypochondriac when it came to my daughter. Long and short of it is, she wound up having brain surgery. Okay. And it was like I couldn't figure out the exact pieces of it, but I knew she had to be checked. And when we got done with the whole thing, and she's, thank heavens, fine today, my husband said to me, "Oh, I'm never going to doubt you again." And I said to him, "Well, that's crazy. I hope you check it out a lot of times because it's not that everything I say is gospel, at all. But it's a way to help people understand there is a path. You could take road A, you could take road B. I can kind of tell you what I think would be best, but if it doesn't resonate with you, then it isn't going to work.
Right.
So it's an interesting thing what people think intuitive counseling is because I'll never forget somebody once came because I used to work out of my house. Somebody once came and said, "Well, if you really are good, tell me what my middle name is." And I started to laugh, going, I
Yeah.
couldn't tell you middle name from today till tomorrow. I might be able to tell you what's going on in your life,
Yeah.
but those little things are not something I'm interested in.
It's
So
like tell me what's the winning lottery number.
my father asked me that a number of times, and I was like, "Dad, I'm sorry. If I could get that, I would just do it." But that's not the point. Okay. I think we are totally all here to help people. We all have stuck points and points of, I don't know what I'm doing, myself included. And it really is about going inside because there is whatever anybody wants to call that energy. um, there is a knowingness when we're working with it, and it's about trusting ourselves. Okay. I i find it so interesting and hard how hard people are on themselves,
Yes.
and how much they don't trust themselves, and that intuition of this feels right for me or this doesn't feel right for me, and learning how to allow that in, in different situations.
Yeah, I have a lot of respect for you in that, the story, because I met you when your daughter was like 4 or 5,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
And, I remember that time period, and I just have to say, it takes a lot of courage to follow that and to stick to your guns when and as
Yeah.
as a mother, like, I just want to say to all the women out there,
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
you're not crazy.
And that's the point that when I said I think everybody has this ability, you know, I think, and I've worked with children all my life, and they are so, the spontaneity that comes in with them, and they don't always check it out. And again, then we get to those ages where I don't want to be the weird kid, so I try to conform, and how much we hold ourselves back. So I
Yeah.
really think it's an entire piece of, wow, there's a whole world out there. And listen, I know right now it's a very tough time to be here. But we've all chosen, myself included, to be here to ground and to work it through. So it's as much as sometimes I would like to pack up and go, this is nuts. That's not where my work lies, and that's not who I am. So it's just about finding the other ways to connect up with those pieces and be at peace inside.
I was discussing this with a client the other day, and I shared this idea that I think, like, those of us who are alive right now in the midst of the chaos and all of the, you know, upheaval and insanity, if you will, that is
Mhm.
happening culturally and in the world, it's like, what kind of, we're pretty brave.
Absolutely.
Like, we signed on
Absolutely.
for a lot. And I think that, you know, utilizing the things that we have at our access to help us continue to heal through these kinds of chaotic times is so important.
Yeah. And I really believe the chaos had to go worldwide as it is now. for us to really understand that we are all connected. You know, it is just not something that's in the United States, that, people need other people. They need to connect. And, with cell phones and iPads and all that stuff, there's such a tendency to, I'll go in my chair and I'll sit there and I'm in my own world. But that's not really what this whole thing has been about. I really believe we're here for the experience, and it's the experience of self-love and love for others, even the ones we don't exactly agree with.
Yeah.
And that's challenging. But
Yeah.
I really and truly believe there is a higher message that's going on. We just have to stay the course with our own grounding as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Um, so I want to backtrack a little bit because when you were talking about being specific, I want to share with everybody who's listening or watching my own personal story that I refer to with you often when I talk to people about you or I refer people to you. It's like, so I came to you because we were planning a cross country trip. Do you remember that?
Mm-hmm.
And
Vaguely, but
my housemate at the time, we were trying to figure out what vehicle
oh
we were going to drive. And you were very clear. You said your car, no way, it's not going to make it. And her car is going to die before you even have a chance to. And so I went home and we discussed it and we thought maybe we would rent a car. And I came back, or maybe it was in the same reading. And you said to me, somebody is going to sell you their car with 40,000 miles on it. And that's the car you're going to take on the trip. And I went home and I left. I said, that is ridiculous. Like, how specific could you be? Like I thought it was a little hokey, right? Until it was a month before we were leaving. And one of my housemates came home and said, oh, my brother's selling his Mazda. It has 42,000 miles on it. Do you know anybody who wants it? And I laughed. I said, oh my gosh, that's my car. That's
and
that's
see,
supposed to be my car.
and that's how like energy works. It is in pounding, and that's the part where the intuitive counseling or the word channeling comes in. When
Yeah.
I learned how to channel, it was get out of your own way, go up, reach your guides, talk to the other guides, get the information, and give it to the person. And what I've learned is two things. Number one, the minute a reading is over, I hardly remember it because it's not my information.
Yeah.
It's just, and I see a lot of people, so I can't combine it. So sometimes people will come in and go, I can't believe, remember when you said that and it happened? And I'm like, I don't want to be insulting, but I don't remember very much of anything.
Yeah.
So that's step number one in the bigger picture. So and I forgot step number two. So it'll come back to me as we're talking.
Well, it is interesting because it brings up another discussion that you and I had a long time ago about, do you ever worry or have concern that some piece of information will come through that you don't feel comfortable sharing, or that, people get a little scared, like, I don't want somebody to tell me I'm going to, get sick in 3 weeks, or that
Right.
the worst thing is going to happen to me.
Right. And no, that's a really good question because I've had a lot of people say, "Don't tell me anything bad." And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
"Please, we're not meant to have a reading." Because I've done this for so long and I've asked to be able to be clear and come through with information that will benefit the other person. But listen, in life, nothing's, certain, and we all have ups and downs. And I had two different experiences. One with a new client who she kept making appointments and then something would happen. Her car broke down. She had a flat tire, and this went on for about 3 or 4 months. And I mean, if you go back 20, 25 years ago, before the advent of cell phones, a lot of times when a person would call, especially a woman, she would say, well, if my husband answers the phone, don't tell him what you do. And so we were going away in the summer, and I said to her, I will call you when I get back because I didn't know what the schedule would be when I got home because my children were young and I was working with them. And when I called back, her husband answered and he said, "Why are you calling?" And I said, "Well, she called me. I'm calling her back." And he said she was killed in a car accident. And that to me was such an oh, she was never meant to come to me. That just wasn't going to work out because would I have known this was going to happen? I don't know. Would I have felt something was off? Maybe. But the point was, I think there is a protective energy, not just for myself, but for the person I'm working with, that if there's information that they are truly not supposed to have, it's not going to happen. So sometimes when I've had to cancel or my clients have had to cancel, it's not a bad, it's more something else needs to come in. And I trust the process that if I'm supposed to see them again, I will. And people are funny. I've had clients who say, "I'll come every week," and I'm like, "No, you won't." No, you won't, because that's not, you have to live your life. This is a guidance point. Take with it what you want, but you have to do the work,
Yeah.
as we all do, about making the changes that are needed.
Can I make a statement about that too? Because I've
Sure.
thought about that a lot over the years. And I think on the flip side of that, if if I call you and you don't call me back, or if I call you and somehow it just doesn't happen and we can't make the appointment, that does not mean that I'm going to die in a car crash.
Exactly. Exactly.
So it's
Well, the
just for a variety of reasons,
yeah,
right? Like,
perfect example of it. I've had two major things come up with people in my life, one in November and one in January, and I was unable to work. And one client called me 3 times and said, "I thought you didn't want to see me because something was terrible." And I said, "No, my life has been in upheaval. So, if you're a little patient, I will get back to you, when the timing is right." But it doesn't mean that if you don't get an appointment, it's because something terrible is going to happen. It
yeah.
just, dueling schedules and dueling connections and things like that.
So it really, at the end of the day, it comes down to trust on every level.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I don't take doing a session lightly. So for me, I have to set my head. I get myself grounded even the night before, the morning before. So it's me trusting the process as well. But it's also the client trusting their own process that what they want to hear is going to help them because when somebody comes in and this is counseling 101 and their arms are crossed and their legs are crossed, they're not really receptive. It doesn't matter what, if you're a medical doctor, they're not going to hear what's being said.
Yeah.
But as I said, I've been fortunate to have some amazing clients, you included, and um, it's just been word of mouth that I've kind of been become to know a whole other group of people. And I really believe everybody has this connection. Just a matter of recognizing it amid, what you're doing during the day and what's going on and everything else.
So do you encourage people to hone that, or to find out what their individual gift is, or is that is
I
that
don't
like
know. I
person to
think
person?
that's really important. And that's where the counseling and the intuition comes in. I like I totally believe in talk therapy. Absolutely. But I think if there are shortcuts to get to, hey, I can tell you this is what I think is the problem. This is where I think it stemmed from. And here's the different things you could do about it. I think it's important because not everybody has the time or the financial resources to sit with a counselor for 6, 8 months. Okay. And, you know, I've been to readers before, and they've said things to me that was like an arrow in the heart going, "Oh, goodness gracious, we're on it." And that's what I think is really important when we can save people that extra energy of, let's go back. Let's look at your childhood. Let's look at
Mhm.
something's wrong with the relationship with this one or that one. And that's what you're going through it today with another person. But if we can clear that up from way back, it helps us. Okay. And that's really what it's about.
Yeah. Well, I highly recommend people who are, you know, kind of trying to figure it out, or they just need a little extra. I just want one other thing that I want to say about Marcia to you people listening, who are watching. Marcia was a guidance counselor in a middle school for how many years?
39.
Right, 39 years. And I often, once we got to be friendly and I knew who she was, I was like, oh my gosh, I wish I had you as a guidance counselor when I was in school.
Well,
I
you know what? And people would say to me, "Do you do the intuitive work with the kids?" And it was like, no, no. The Board of Ed is paying me for my counselor role. But again, it was how people dealt with people that if you could bring that out between children and their parents,
Yeah,
what's the root of what was going on? We got to solve so much of it in a speedier fashion and really get on with things. And I
yeah.
think that's important.
Do you read for children also?
Not young children,
Okay.
not young children. I have an age limit of nobody under 18
Okay.
because I also think there's such a level of being impressionable and they're trying to figure things out. And there's just a difference between 16 and 18 in human growth. And I think that that's all part of it. And I won't read for my family. It just that doesn't work out well. So I have to cut that off when it comes to that and then just be me in terms of whatever I need to do, I go with. But I've learned to listen more now on a daily basis just for myself, not just for others about do that, don't do that. And when I don't listen, I get myself in trouble. So I've learned to trust it more, not just for others, but for myself as well.
Yeah, well done. So if people want to contact you, how would they find you?
Um, are you listing a phone number and an
Yeah,
email or?
it'll be in the show notes.
Okay,
There's
okay.
your
That's fine. People can do that. And as long as they have some patience, because like right now we're the end of April, I'm looking at June. It's not something that I can say I can talk to you tonight or tomorrow because it just like life, there's other things going on, and the key is to have balance. Because I wouldn't want to do readings all day long.
yeah,
That would be draining for me, and I don't think it would be fair for the other person. Because I've had people say, "Could you come to a reading party?" And I will not do that. That's too much energy coming at me at once,
mhm,
and the human part of me can't sit very long. So I kind of know what my limit is like in a day or in a week because I need to honor that whomever I'm working for, it's not just the money they're paying me, it's the energy that they want from me. And if I'm tired, you don't want a reading from me at 8 o'clock at night because I
yeah.
can't even pay attention. So it's a connection that goes through.
Before we sign off, is there anything else that you want to add that would be useful for people?
I am, as my husband calls me, the eternal optimist. Okay. So no matter what is going on, I really think there's a way we can get through it, even the toughest times. And so, it's like I tell people, don't give up. We might have to find five other solutions to what's going on, but giving up isn't an option in terms of there's a lot of different ways to handle problems, not just me, the work you do, the work others do. And it's about, keep asking for guidance because it's there. Sometimes we just have to clean our ears out to hear it differently. That's all.
Well said. Thank you so
Gotcha.
much. Thank you for
Oh,
taking the time to sit and chat with me, Marcia. And I love you so much. And
right back at you, Susie.
onward and upward.
Okay. You got it.
To my listeners, thank you so much for tuning in, and see you on the next episode. Have a wonderful day.